Range of motion, flexion and extension is the yes motion, the nodding of the head. Hyperextension is looking up from the midline. It's about a 45-degree angle. Lateral flexion, touching your ears to your shoulders, that position. You want to do that at about 40 degrees from the midline. Rotation is the no, go to about 70 degrees. For flexion and extension and hyperextension of the shoulder, this is flexion where you're up, extension and hyperextension is down and back. Abduction is lateral. Then adduction is in across your body, kind of in. Circumduction is a circular motion. External rotation I don't know if I can do it with him. It's like that. And that's also when the fingers point up, that's external. When the fingers point down, that's internal rotation. And then the elbow joint, flexion is just where you straighten out your arm. I'm sorry, it's where you bring it in. Extension is where you straighten it out. Flexion is where you bring it in. Let's see. Rotation for supination. You're going to turn your palm, hold your arms out in front of you. Turn your palm basically just upwards. And then the rotation for pronation is the same thing. Hold your arm out in front of you and turn your hand where it's facing, your palm where it's facing the ground. For the wrist, flexion, bring it towards the inner aspect of the forearm. So flexion. Extension is straightening. Hyperextension is pushing it back. And then the radial flexion or abduction is to bend the wrist laterally towards the thumb side. So see, it's kind of moving. And the ulnar flexion or adduction is to bend it towards the fifth finger. So then the hands and fingers, flexion is to make a fist. Extension, straighten fingers. Hyperextension, bend them back. Adduction, spread them apart. Abduction, spread them apart. Adduction, bring them together. For the thumb, flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, extend it laterally, and then moving it back to the hand is adduction. And opposition is touching your thumb to each of the fingers on the same hand. Okay, hip. I don't know if you could see me. Let me get over here. Oh, I can do it with my bare, maybe. Okay, move for extension. You're gonna just move it forward and line it back up. Hyperextension. Actually, extension says move it forward and back, kind of like when you're walking, moving it forward and then back. And then hyperextension is to move it back behind the body. So, abduction, move each leg out to the side. adduction, move each leg back to the other leg and beyond in front of it, so you can kind of cross and, I don't know if you can see that. So, and then circumduction is just circular motions with your leg, with your hip joint. Okay. Internal rotation is where you bend the knee and then you bring it in towards the midline. Then the foot is kind of out. I do this stretch all the time. I can't do it on this bear. So anyways, bend the knee, foot's kind of out. You're going to stretch it towards the midline of the body. And then external is bend your knee, place your foot toward the midline, and then move your knee outwards, away from the midline. Okay, for the knee flexion, bend the knee, bring your heel to the back of your thigh. Extension is to straighten the leg, returning it to its normal position. For the ankle, okay, pointing the toes downward is extension. Pointing the toes upward is flexion. And then foot circles are a type of eversion for the foot. You turn the sole of each foot laterally. And then inversion is where turn the sole of each foot medially. So you would just stretch it towards the midline. Wiggle your toes. And then okay, I want to do that one over. So I don't think I fully understood that. In the book it says eversion, turn the sole of each foot laterally. So I'm guessing that's, and it says example, foot circles clockwise and counterclockwise. So there's clockwise and then counterclockwise. And it says inversion, I think it says example, foot circles clockwise and counterclockwise. And then example is also walking and wiggling the toes. So I don't fully understand that one. Okay, for the toes, my bear doesn't have toes, but I'll do it as best as I can. Extension is straightening of the toes, and then flexion is where they curl the toes. Okay, for the trunk, flexion is bending forward. Hyperextension or extension is straightening. Hyperextension is bending backwards. Then lateral flexion is next. Side to side. And then rotation is where you twist. See that? Okay, and that's range of motion.